Hey everybody, Montel here, and thanks so much for tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. And my guest today has a very interesting background. He began his career in law enforcement where he developed an expertise in drug and gang intervention, identification, and eradication. Soon after, he became an advocate to the end of the war on drugs. And in 1991, he began investing in distressed real estate and launched a total of 23 private equity funds. And today, he is the CEO of Glass House, a vertically integrated California cannabis-based company. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Kazan. Thank you so much, Kyle, for being a part of the show today.
Thank you, Montel, for inviting me on.
Absolutely. And I don't know if I pronounced your last name right. Did I pronounce it right?
Kazan would be the best, but I'll take whatever.
Okay, Kazan, there you go. Well, let's back up for a second here, sir, because you're in a really interesting business for the background that you have. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your law enforcement background in LA County?
Yeah, just prior, I had been an inner city school teacher in South Central Los Angeles from 90 to 94. And, I wasn't making very much money, and I was a college athlete before that. And I missed kind of that team. And then I realized society would pay me twice as much money to be a police officer than to be a school teacher. So I put an application in with the Torrance Police Department, and they hired me, and I doubled my money. And, I was also dabbling quite a bit in real estate, made me mobile. So it just felt like a good fit personally. And then I was part of a team, and, so that was the impetus to go into law enforcement.
So you go to law enforcement, and then of course, you're involved in executing and fulfilling, some of the draconian drug laws. What got you thinking that maybe the war on drugs wasn't the best and smartest thing?
It didn't happen like an aha moment. I wish it happened as an aha moment before I became a police officer. But, when you're going through 6 months of an academy out here, and they're teaching the different laws that you're out there to enforce, drug enforcement, if you watch The Wire, you see it's just low-hanging fruit, and it's everywhere. It's in front of you. And you get accolades, and you are looked at by your peers as a good police officer if you're hooking and booking, taking people to jail for violating the law. And so I became call it a drug warrior. And then, the Torrance Police Department sent me to different trainings. Gangs and drugs are intertwined because it's an illicit market. So the gangs jump in and take it over. So, it threw me right into the middle of it. And then after a while, where I lead the department, and it's a decent sized department, Torrance, 2 different 6-month periods in felony and misdemeanor arrests. So I was number one. And mainly it was taking people to jail for possession or possession for sale. And as I got into the system, having a business head on the other side, I'm watching the time I'm spending not patrolling for crimes properties and crimes persons, but I'm taking people to jail for putting a bundle of methamphetamine or heroin or, crack cocaine in their pockets. So they're not hurting anybody. And then I'm getting called to court in the DA's office and the judges and the bailiffs and the jails. And after a while, they became my informants, and I'm a pretty affable person. I think I'm a very caring person. And these folks then were saying, Kyle, they'd call me at 2 a.m. My wife used to go, who in God's name is calling? This is on my day off. I said, yeah, they don't know. Mark doesn't know it's my day off. And I'd call them back, or they're on a payphone. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, I'm ready to get off of drugs. And I'm like, I don't have anything, Mark. I have jail. Society doesn't give me any other tools. And they're like, can you take me to jail as gently as possible and get me into some sort of diversion? And I remember just going, Mark is a really nice person. He just has a real problem. And over time, I just said, this is a stupid game. I'm running on like a mouse on a wheel, and I'm getting accolades for being a good police officer, but I'm not spending society's resources well. And I didn't feel good about taking Mark to jail when he was just a guy, and I didn't really know him, faceless, nameless to me. It didn't mean as much, but all of a sudden I start caring for him and finding out about his grandmother, and then giving him money to help him get some food. I'm like, this is ridiculous. We should be helping this person. We should legalize this. And so basically towards the end of my 5-year stint, my statistics went way down. And Mark would call me, or other people would call me. I know they're holding, and I would just talk to them and just let them go. Just like, didn't even know they're holding, but I knew that they were under the influence. That was illegal too. And I became disenchanted, and then just retired after 5 years, which basically means resigned because I had no medical issues, and then went out and pursued business interests.
And those business interests you pursued was you got involved in real estate. You had already been in real estate.
Exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but so I was a graveyard police officer most of the time, which is why I was getting those 2 a.m. phone calls. And then during the day, I would be out, putting partnerships together to buy apartment buildings, and going through that. And so I was really working that. It turned out I had a bit of a knack, and so I did that, and then would push my patrol car around at night, and everything seemed to work well. About January of '99, it just felt right to say, I have this business that it looks like it's going to be thriving. And, I served the people of Torrance, I think, with as much respect as I could, and worked hard, but I felt it was a good time. And, when I started that company in 1999, it had 250 units under management. I'm still the majority owner. It manages about 7,500 units out here in Southern California, about $2.8 billion worth of real estate, from $20 million at the time. So I was able to really grow that business over 21 years.
Well, after being that successful in the real estate empire business, what made you decide to enter the legal cannabis market?
So that's a great question, and I probably get that question more than anything else in my life. Somewhere around 2008, a group of friends asked me what I thought about the drug war. So I'd been out of policing now for, about 9 years, and I told them, I said, I think it's terrible. They said, would you want to meet some people from LEAP, which at the time was called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and they were totally focused in on the drug war. And so I met with some members. Norm Stamper was the retired chief of Seattle PD, and they told me what they do, and they showed me the statistics that they'd compiled, which made that emotional argument that I had into a factual argument of how many resources that we wasted, and who we were putting in jail. And I said, absolutely. I said, look, we pay, we reimburse fees. I said, no, this is my penance for my role in an immoral drug war, a racist drug war. And so I started speaking out. It was relatively quiet, and then legalization of marijuana picked up here in California under Prop 19 in 2011, and all of a sudden the requests for speaking became massive, and all of a sudden I was on CNN, Fox, all the local stations, and that's where people in the marijuana business started reaching out to me to see if I would help finance, invest, things like that. And I chose not to. I upset a lot of people in law enforcement. They felt that, including people that had trained me in drugs and gangs, they felt I was a real Benedict Arnold. And I said, look, if I invest with you, you're now already a target. You'll be a much bigger target. And LAPD still had a battering ram that they were using back then. And I said, I don't need to hear it at my front door at 2 a.m. So at the end of the day, that was my first kind of, wow, this is a very interesting business. I just didn't want to participate. So and then rolling the clock forward, after Colorado and Washington in 2013 legalized it in January 1 of 14, I started going to Colorado quite a bit because I knew the momentum was there. And being a history major in college, I felt that 1933, the end of alcohol prohibition, was going to happen. And I thought this might be something I'd want to partake in.
Okay, but now it's interesting though, because even though the laws had passed, some of your former peers were still ramping up to maintain a drug war.
Sure. I think there's no doubt about that, Montel. I would tell you the officers that I worked with here in Southern California, and I know many from different departments, these are thoughtful people, and they will follow the laws that are on the books. They will enforce them. And most would tell me, by the way, most police officers had used marijuana in their earlier lives and had confessed to that during the hiring process. So when it came down to marijuana, most of them saw it as a relatively benign drug, but if it's on the books, they're going to, most are going to enforce it. And so the overwhelming majority, especially as time went on, was just tell us the law, tell us how it should be enforced, and we'll do it. And most are good soldiers that way. But, the chiefs, because I'm an older person, a lot of my friends from law enforcement from the 94 when I came on, they had moved the upper echelons of police departments. So I would talk to the chiefs, and they were the ones that were the most headstrong. They were against it, and I used to talk to several of them and say, look, there's a piece of pie that's going to be cut here for law enforcement. If you don't put yourself at the table and accept where things are going, you're going to be left out, and you're going to be the ones who are tasked to go into dispensaries, just like you are in bars by, with the ABC regulations, alcohol. So it was less the line officer and much more the chiefs. And let's not forget, and this is kind of the dirty little secret that everybody should know, that budgets of police departments from the feds all the way down, they fund some of their operations through asset forfeitures. So the drug war is a profitable business for the police departments. They need that for their budgets. That's how they pay for a lot of their operations. And so I'm sure that's part of the reason the chiefs were not anxious to see that go away, even with marijuana. And that's an ugly reality. It's probably we can go much deeper into that at a different time, but I'm totally opposed to the asset forfeiture laws.
Sure. And I mean, back then, we were talking since 2011, 13, I was involved. I had already been advocating for medical marijuana around the country at that point for 10 years, and was involved
100%.
quite a bit in the California landscape, just in helping the municipalities, come up with legislation or come up with rules and regulations. And I remember those times now back in 11 and 12, there were, even though it was not completely legal like it is now, there were dispensaries that were opening up, some of which were opening up illegally, but kind of being grandfathered in by city municipalities. So that had to change, right?
Montel, I will tell you, number one, let me give you a tip of the cap, because you had a lot of foresight and a lot of guts, because I saw you on TV. You were enjoying a very thriving career, and to come out very publicly like that was admirable. And it came with a lot of risks, and so I appreciate it and appreciate it today. So I honor you for what you did. The Prop 215 that you're referring to was voted in by Californians in 1996, and and I was a police officer at that time, and we literally had no guidance as to how to handle that, and so it was really a mishmash, and the people that ran dispensaries ran the gamut from gangs and criminals to the finest people that you'll ever meet that were growing and giving the plant away, and it was just the regulations weren't there, and that was what was really missing. Because to me, law enforcement is a tool of the government. The government is us. And so we need to give direction to the government as to what we wanted to do. So Prop 64 didn't pass in the state of California until 2017 or 16, and went into effect later. So, it was really not good out here.
Yeah, everything was a gray area back then. I remember, talking to legislators up in the Bay Area, and no one knew what would take place, 100 yards outside of their city's municipality. which was really kind of insane. So then you decided to start. Is this when you started Glass House?
It wasn't a vision, and I'm gonna tell you that timing has been my forte in my investing career. Luck played a big part of this. I wanted to buy some assets and participate in the business because I felt I had been fortunate in buying during some big downturns prior to, and during those downturns, if I were buying an apartment complex, I could borrow 75, 80%, and then I only had to come up with 20, 25% of the price. Marijuana, cannabis, you had to come up with 100%, and it was federally illegal. And so I said, man, there is a massive capital dislocation that when 1933 repeats itself, we're gonna have an opportunity just on a looking at making money, to really do very well. And so that's when we bought Bud and Bloom, which is a store that we were honored to have you come in. I think you came in 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
We're I think the 10th in Santa Ana and 10th in Orange County, California. And it was a big deal when you came in because you're a hero to the marijuana community. And then we also bought a farm up in Santa Barbara. And the difference was we also bought the real estate too. And that's always been a bugaboo for the operators here is how hard it is because the rents, you just get gouged crazy, because the landlords are taking a big risk too. I mean, they can get their loans called. It was a very difficult situation. So I just thought we'd acquire some assets, and I've made a lot of money for people, and they were willing to put money in, and by the way, the first page of my document to them was, you should not do this. And then it was, here's the opportunity. And by the way, my business partner and I are going to be the biggest investors in this fund. And so that was where we started in 2015, 16. And then we did 4 subsequent funds that acquired more assets. And we started doing strategically to vertically integrate, meaning we could go from the seed all the way to the ashtray. And earlier this year is when we put all of those into what's the Glass House Group. And we're one of the largest growers in North America. The one thing I'll tell you I'm most proud of, Montel, is that we really care about the plant. We really care about the people, not just our investors, but all of the people that work through this pandemic. They're out there cutting the plants, planting them. They're at the stores, and our patients, customers. We really want to do right by this, and we feel like to be in this industry compared to real estate and so many other businesses, we have a higher responsibility to do things the right way.
Well, I mean, now a lot of people consider, California is the biggest market and oldest market right now, legal market in the United States. It's viewed by many as being one of the most challenging because of a lot of the individual municipality regulations and taxation. How have you been able to navigate this really crazy, evolving regulatory environment?
Boy, that is a great question. You look at Florida, and Florida forces you to vertically integrate and basically sort of gives you a moat to be a monopoly. California, they just did it as the wild, wild west. And I was part of Prop 64. And I think the failure in our thinking was that we thought this would be embraced statewide because the voters embraced it. So we thought their elected leaders would. And as we sit here today, I want to say 70 or 75% of the cities and counties in the state of California are still illegal. So, and the ones that are legal, everything takes twice as long and costs at least 50% more than you budget. It's been a real battle, and we've watched a lot of good companies go by the wayside because they just couldn't afford to stay in business. I would say the differentiator to us was we took an extremely conservative approach, and we bought all of our real estate for cash so that we didn't have, very high mortgages. We're talking north of 10% mortgages, very high rents, which just buries you when you have these time clocks ticking, but you can't operate because you're just going through a morass of government regulation, and I'm for regulation, but that's why we've survived, and that's why we've been able to thrive. And also being vertically integrated has been a boon for us, so we're able to drive higher margins. But it has not been easy, and to be here in 2020 and to be profitable, we thank our lucky stars, and continue just driving forward. And quite frankly, we have about 300 team members, um, the best. These folks, remember March and April when COVID, you thought this could be Italy and you're going to die. And these people still tirelessly went to work and felt an obligation to make sure people, there was a big run on our cannabis, and they were out there very brave. And so, I'm just honored to be with this group of people. And if it weren't for those people, we wouldn't have survived.
And then, that's something that's really interesting to talk about, is the fact that cannabis appears to be almost like recession proof. It's been pandemic proof. And this is in almost every state that has a cannabis regulation, because it was deemed an essential service and proved to be an essential service. I think it's probably part of the reason why, there's less amount of protesting that we could have had if there was cannabis available. But, at the same time, California is also rife with the fact that municipalities in some ways have now overtaxed to the point that it's made it so difficult for anybody to start up that it's pushed some of the cannabis sales back into the black and gray market. And I shouldn't even use the term black market, but it's pushed it back into the illegal market and this gray kind of a market that, I mean, if you look at it over time, and I know you're a guy who's a planner and a businessman who's focused, how can you stay focused on securing the profits that you have when municipalities are working as hard as they can to slice into those profits as deeply as they can, because they realize that you are recession proof in a way? So there's a way, let's make some more money off of these guys, raise taxes.
Yeah, the misconception that we battle from, seemingly everyone, is that we're rolling in money like Tony Montana, that we've just got like some sort of a cash counting machine. And that's just not the case. Retail is retail. And the margins are maybe a little bit better than normal retail. And the government, they see this as a sin market, and they extract quite a pound of flesh. I'm hoping over time, and I think there was some traction with the state of California to actually lower taxes, at least give us a reprieve. The illicit market, if our taxes all in are 35-40% from the time you grow it to the time you sell it to the end consumer, I mean, that's 40% margin that you've given to the illicit market. And the illicit market out here in California is more entrenched than anywhere else. And to boot, wherever you are around the country outside of California, you go buy something on the street corner, illicit cannabis, the highest price is California. So there's a lot of forces pushing this, and it really makes it hard for the legal operator. Some of the legal operators, it's always rumored that they're involved in the illegal market. We have never done that. We have always stayed legal, because that's what I fought for. But you're absolutely right. The government has been a help in passing legislation, but they have been quite a hindrance.
Well, Kyle, hold on a second, because I got to take a little break and pay some bills. You guys have been listening to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, and our guest today has been Mr. Kyle Kazan, who is a really unbelievable guest, very interesting background, started out in law enforcement, and now runs probably one of the only or most profitable cannabis companies in all of California. He's the CEO of Glass House. We'll have some more discussions with him when we come back, so stick around. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, folks, to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where today's guest is Mr. Kyle Kazan, who is the CEO of Glass House, a vertically integrated cannabis company in California. He started his career and his professional career in policing as a law enforcement officer, and went from policing into being involved in real estate, then turning real estate into his primary business, starting a couple of hedge funds, and then transitioned into cannabis, which is really an incredible background to get in this business. And we were having discussions before the break, and Kyle, we were talking about the fact that California is really one of the largest markets when it comes to cannabis worldwide. I think probably only second to Canada, and it's viewed by a lot of people as being the most challenging market there is right now in cannabis. And part of the reason is because it's so tough to navigate all the evolving regulatory environment that's going on. Every single city has a different, every municipality has a different rule and regulation. I was involved, I should say, for 100% complete disclosure. I had a brand that was, I was moving into California. So I was in Northern California and Oregon. Also just getting ready to move to Washington State. But I found California to be just so ridiculously daunting that we just had to back off a little bit. How have you been able to keep running what is really probably one of the most financially successful cannabis businesses in the state? How do you stay ahead?
So Montel, that's the question that now we get asked all the time at different investment banker conferences that we attend. And what I would tell you is most people that are watching this, even in California, don't know that 70 to 75% of municipalities and counties are in fact illegal. So the legal businesses like ours cannot participate. The illicit market is all over it. And given the fact that we pay the high taxes we talked about, it just makes it daunting. And it has not unfolded the way I think everybody thought it would. It hasn't been embraced by the legislators of the different cities and counties, which has made it extremely challenging. Chalk it up as better to be lucky than good. We did the exact opposite of real estate, where real estate, you leverage up 70, 75, 80% with debt so that you make your cash go far. I did a complete pivot because I didn't know how crazy this situation would be. And thankfully, since we own our own real estate, we don't have 10 to 15% interest mortgages. We don't have crazy high rents. And so that's given us the staying power. And it turned out that the supply chain really, really matters. So if you decide to come in and say, hey, I want to bottle my own wine, in this case, my own cannabis, you have to buy it from people like myself. And the prices, the average brand that doesn't have their own supply chain, they lose money on every transaction. It makes absolutely no sense. And so when other states, they're thinking of legalization, say, we don't want to be like California, I get it. Little correction, California is a much bigger market actually than Canada too. We're the 5th largest economy in the world, and that's bigger than Canada. So we are the largest cannabis market in the world, and I'm very proud of the fact that we are profitable in the market that everybody wants to win in. And I feel terrible for those that have struggled, gone out of business. And when people ask me, hey, I want to get into cannabis, I always am quick to point out that there will be some fortunes made, and there's going to be many more lost, because it is so hard. And to be a small player right now in California, so difficult. It's just, I think over time that will change, but you're absolutely right. The perception that people have that California is the land of the green rush, it's just not so. It's so difficult here.
It's so crazy to me, though, that when you go through the numbers and talk about 70% of municipalities have it still being illegal, yet on their backyards and in their backyards, there is an illicit market that they are not participating in any taxes for. And I can't see the risk benefit or the benefit of trying to figure out how you can seize enough to make it any way beneficial to you as a municipality. It just seems crazy. What's it going to take to get the whole state to come up with some uniform approach?
God, that's logic over emotion, right? And that's the battle we face when we were just talking about the war on drugs. If I told you, if you just legalized heroin, so many fewer deaths would happen, if we took that approach. But the first thing you hear is heroin's terrible. It's like, we have an opioid epidemic, fentanyl. People are dying all over this country. Why do we still have that illegal? So, and I can show you a numerical argument where it's not even, I mean, it's a fact that it would absolutely save lives to do that. But again, emotion over logic. And so I think now that we're in this crisis, this financial crisis, and California has been terribly hard hit, you're going to start seeing, led by fire, teachers, police unions, looking for revenue so that they don't have to cut salaries, they don't have to do furlough days. And one of the things that will be brought up is, what if we started opening up some dispensaries? What if we started opening up, different parts of the business? And I think we're going to start to see that happen. Plus, the cities that have done it, by and large, have found, Santa Barbara County, where we grow in 500,000 square feet of greenhouses, they run a structural deficit. They called us during the pandemic and said, "How are you guys doing? What can we do to help you? You guys okay? Are you guys going to be paying taxes?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're going to have a record year." And so we pay millions of dollars to Santa Barbara County. As those stories come, I expect not to lose any cities or counties because we're not having problems. I expect that will make the business easier here.
And do you think, I mean, let's take a look at that, expand that out nationally. I mean, if you had a crystal ball, the rest of the country's got to be looking at this the exact same way. I mean, that's the reason why you have 4 states that have, laws on the books, or have ballot initiatives that are pushing for adult use right now. And then, 2 extra states, including the state of Mississippi, come on, that is looking to, have a medical program actually fully legalized in the state. I mean, what do you see on the horizon nationally?
Yeah, great question. The president we have right now, he's consistently inconsistent, right? I don't think it should be legalized I would like to be legalized as soon as possible. I don't think it's going to be legalized, but you never know. If Nancy Pelosi puts through the MORE Act, and the president thinks it's going to help him because there's some social justice initiatives in there, you never know. You just don't know what's going to come out of DC. But if you ask me to handicap it, I would say sometime in 2021, 2022. And I would point out that Republicans and Democrats, when you look at the states where it's been legal the longest, Cory Gardner's Republican, a senator from Colorado, which is a purple state, he can't afford to lose that. I mean, it's very popular in Colorado. When I say popular, people's salaries are dependent on these taxes. It becomes an entitlement to the state. You can't take it away. And so the politicians start falling in line. So as those dominoes, Mississippi, and some of the other states, it's going to come to the point of just ridiculous to not deschedule it. So I think it's just, again, logic over emotion. But I think if you ask me to handicap it, no later than the end of 2022, and it will be descheduled. And then it's just going to be a states' rights issue, and you figure it, and everyone will just kind of figure it out for themselves.
And in the state of California, again, you just already said that maybe some of these other municipalities that have been on the fence will start to gravitate towards passage. Do you see a time? I mean, in California right now, is it illegal in those municipalities that don't allow for sale for you to have possession?
No. So it's a great question. You can possess marijuana at 21 as a 21-year-old or older, or 18 with a medicinal card, anywhere in the state of California. And you can deliver it to any municipality in the state. So those 75% that are not legal, you can still deliver to them from, a neighboring or somewhere where you're legally licensed. So that has made it where, to your point, like the city of, I live in Palos Verdes. None of the 4 cities up there have it legal, so they get no tax. But you can call a delivery, you can call our dispensaries, and we'll deliver it to you. And so the city of Los Angeles will get the tax, or the city of Long Beach will get the tax. And so I think at some point you'll start to see some of those other dominoes fall. If nothing else, just why not take a piece of the pie? You're just losing it right now.
Right. Now let's change gears for just a second. But what do you think is one of the biggest issues, really holding back this entire industry? I've been saying, now for years that I think one of the biggest problems with the cannabis industry is education. We've done a great job. You've done a great job from a B2B standpoint, from a business standpoint. But, we have really, I think, done one of the poorest jobs in educating the consumer and educating the masses. I mean, there are still people out here who don't even understand. I was just doing a podcast recently with a doctor who's one of the leading doctors in Washington, D.C., who, took a course here recently at George Washington University on the endocannabinoid system. And, University of Maryland has just started this year its master's degree program in cannabis. But when you look across the country, they represent less than 0.01% of the colleges in the entire country that are teaching things that are scientifically proven information that's been out there. And part of that, I think, is because there hasn't been as big a push. There's been such a huge push trying to be profitable at selling pot, but not a huge push at educating people as to why they need to even buy it. So
Right.
What do you think about things that this industry should do to literally help change our own equation?
God, that's, boy, you're right on point. The education, we do it person by person. In my neighborhood, I live in an affluent area, and most of the people don't see cannabis as a bugaboo. They see it as, well, I did it when I was young in college, but now I've heard it's really strong. And so my kids are doing it, and then I'll say, are you in pain? I mean, I'm 53. I wake up with a sprained ankle. I don't even know how that happened. And so when I give them some drops of our very high CBD, very low THC, and to get their cannabinoid system going and take it 4 times a day won't get you high, inevitably they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so much better. I can golf every day. I'm not as swollen as I used to be. The inflammation has gone away. And so that's kind of a person by person. And then, by the way, inevitably they'll say, do you have I heard about edibles. And then I teach that very carefully so they don't have a bad trip on that. But typically then people are like, okay, maybe I'll drink a little less wine, a little less beer, a little less tequila, and I'll enjoy that. And so it's happening slowly. I tried to do what you said, and I'll tell you some of the problems. I got together with the head of pharmacology at the University of California, Irvine, a guy named Dr. Daniel Piamelli. And I saw him on some YouTube clip, and I was like, okay, he gets it. And I had U.S. Representative Dana Rohrabacher at the time, who represented that area. And we did an infomercial, an informational at UCI, and basically it had to be privately funded by some donors because the University of California, Irvine gets federal money. So all those schools that get federal money, which is all of them, they don't want to risk that. And they're talking about a federally illegal substance. But when you listen to what he had to say, this is a foregone conclusion for so many. The CBD works for so many different ailments that it's a crime that we're not taking this much more seriously and we're not getting the information out. But I think a lot of this just comes down to federal legalization so that people at these universities can then open up more programs and talk more about it and get more research done. But without a doubt, Montel, CBD has been a game changer. I'm going to share with you this. My wife has had both of her knees partially replaced. The first time, they gave her a bunch of opioids, and she didn't like that idea. And I gave her some of our Glass House wellness product, which was just some tincture she put under her tongue. And she found great relief. The second time she went back to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, they were going to hook up a opioid pump. And she said, no way. And they sent the anesthesiologist and said, this is major surgery. You're going to be in a lot of pain. What are you going to do? And she goes, I'm going to take CBD. And literally, she was like, I need to get more information because this is worrisome. And my wife, after major surgery, used CBD. That's it.
And the research is out there. The research is solid. It's being researched all over the world, here in the United States, overseas, and peer-reviewed studies are coming out talking about the efficaciousness of CBD and other cannabinoids in an anti-inflammatory response. We know that for a fact now, and I understand why colleges aren't doing as much, but I don't understand why our industry is not doing as much. That's what I was referring to. That I think that this industry would behoove itself to literally start putting together tutorial information, like you said. If you're going to fund a video, then fund a video yourself anyway. Put it out there just to talk about the value of it. I mean, there's nothing that can stop you from putting out information if it's educational information, and if it's information that falls in line with what the federal government has said. And the federal government, which owns a patent on CBD, wrote in the abstract exactly what it felt its efficaciousness was. So therefore, you can say what the federal government said, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. Especially even when you look at some of the research that's come out of the University of Mississippi, the federal government is the ones who put their name on the documents that come out of there talking about the efficaciousness of just CBD itself. But even if we're just going to talk about that, you look at the fact that in the last couple of months, there's been paper after paper after paper written about the extraordinary anti-inflammatory benefits of CBD, and even looking at it during this COVID pandemic.
So, Montel, I couldn't have said it. I mean, you should be the video that we should play for ourselves. You said it so well. We, on our advisory board, we have a doctor named Orrin Devinsky. And Orrin Devinsky, if your child is battling seizure disorders, he's at NYU Hospital. He is one of the preeminent doctors for that. And he has said the same things. He said, look, we should be funding some studies. And he did that with Epidiolex, by the way. He was the one who helped get it through the FDA. So we take that very seriously. And when you said, we're one of the few companies making money in California, we don't have tons of budget to get that word out there. It's not easy. That's why coming on a show with you is a way for your listeners to hear. It's like, look, before you go take Advil and potentially destroy your kidneys, before you take opioids and potentially become addicted. My mother became addicted. She'll get pissed that I said that. But, I've seen the downsides, and you can die. There's not one recorded case of an overdose death from cannabis. And my wife had no constipation, all the issues you get with everything else, and it does everything you need. And by the way, I'm not claiming that it does anything with COVID, but what I have read is that when you have the cytokine storm, a lot of that comes from inflammation. And so that's part of the reason proactively I take CBD 4 times a day so that I keep my inflammation down, so that if I do get COVID, I think I might have a better chance of not having that cytokine storm because I'm not having that inflammation. So I'm with you, Montel.
There is a peer-reviewed study document out right now talking about the advantages and the anti-inflammatory capability of CBD and cannabinoids versus the standard anti-inflammatories, and how much more effective they are right now during COVID. So that's backed up by science and research. I gotta say thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the show today. Anything else you want to add?
Montel, I want to add how much I respect that you have been out there. And I know I said a little bit earlier, but I know it was not easy for you. And right now it feels like dog years that happened. But I just appreciate that you've been a champion for the cannabis industry. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for being you.
Thank you so much, sir. Really. And thank you for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Today we've been talking to Mr. Kyle Kazin, who is the CEO of Glass House. And if anybody want to get information about your company, so where do they go?
GlassHouseGroup.com.
GlassHouseGroup.com?
Yep.
GlassHouseGroup.com. Get some information. It's a vertically integrated California cannabis company. And if they want to come by, I can do this also. If they wanted to come by and pick up some product, where should they go? Where can they
Wow, thank you. My marketing team will be thrilled and mad at me that I didn't do that on my own. In Orange County, we own Bud and Bloom. In Los Angeles, we own The Pottery. And in Santa Barbara and Berkeley, we own the Pharmacy with an F. And I would tell you, consider going to pick up some Glass House Wellness or some Mama Sue. Both of those are our brands with that very high CBD, and ask the good folks that work there how to use it. And I think, I'll guarantee if you don't feel better, bring it back and we'll give you your money back.
Well, there you go. You heard it here. So again, we've been talking to Mr. Kyle Kazin, and I got to say thank you so much for being a part of today's show, and thank you guys for tuning in the way you always do to Let's Be Blunt with Montel.